Hello and welcome to Across the Pond Aces. Back for week two. I think the Aces had a great week one, undefeated.
Love it.
And into week two, here we are. And Samantha, we are absolutely flying. And we've had such a great week, such a great news week, and on and off the court. And like things are just kind of ticking along nicely.
I think last season, I mean not last season, last episode, I think I called it, we had predicted 4-0 as we went through the schedule. We had said we it was going to be 4-0 and we're 4 games into what I predict is going to be that perfect season. Now, do we really think it's going to be a perfect season? Maybe not. But let's hope, right? Aces are hungry. They're going to go after it. They're continuing to do so, and I think right now, so far, my odds are pretty good.
I think, like, you look at the performances, and we'll get into the games in a second, but I think just overall, the performances that we've seen from this team have been tremendous, and we've really stuffed teams into a corner where we just don't let them out. And I think teams are going to struggle, and even the high defense teams, the high like Connecticut, we've got coming up a double header, like they are huge on defense. We've seen
Mhm.
Brianna Stewart knows all about that. But we've seen like our defense is pretty damn good too.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for us has been we tasted victory this last couple months ago, if we really think about it. And we didn't just say we won, that's it. We're saying we won. And I think they recently said too, they know they have a target on their back. It's not stopping them. In fact, it's making them more hungrier. It's making them want to go after it. And I think that's the perfect thing is, you see this all the time with other sports. Think about college football, right? Alabama. Alabama wins every year. And now teams are going after them. And in the recent years, you've kind of seen them not winning. You're seeing the Yankees, right? The Yankees have always been your traditional team with that have won so many championships and so many rings. And it's like people want to go after them. But the Aces, for them, which I found really fascinating, and I actually did not know this, they are the first professional, major league professional team in Vegas to win a championship there. And I was super shocked by that because, to be honest, I always thought the Vegas Golden Knights, their first year into the league, I thought they won that Stanley Cup. And I guess maybe my lack of knowledge on NHL. Maybe, maybe they have a chance this year again. Could be a trifecta for, not trifecta. It could be a little, who knows, with the Raiders this year too. Let's see what happens for Vegas. I mean, you never know, right? Maybe I'll call that one too. Um,
Unless Tom Brady comes out of retirement and starts playing and owning the team. Uh,
Now he
uh,
could pull a Brett Favre and come out, unless he's going to start doing some commercials like Brett Favre did. But realistically, I found that so fascinating. So for them to have that accolade of being the first in Vegas. Most cities, their WNBA team is not the first one. It's usually been NFL, baseball. It's been something of that nature. So to see that, I was like, wow. When I read that fact, I was like, that's actually super awesome. It goes back to your point about merchandise last time that we talked about. For them not to even have merchandise readily available other than at the stadium, I was like, that is so shocking.
yeah, that's not great. One thing I think as well that that allows us to be competitive or want to be competitive or
Mhm.
gives us that extra chip is that every game at the beginning of the season counts because of the Commissioner's Cup.
Yeah.
You look at the NBA, you look at the NFL, you know, you can have a slow start to a
Yeah.
season as a championship team, and we've seen this with the Warriors when they were kind of on
Yeah.
their runs. Like, they would have a slow start to the season, and then they'd hit their stride come playoffs, and,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
they were flying. But because we've got the Commissioner's Cup, it makes every game so important,
Oh, yeah.
and I think that is, like, a big factor in the performances that we've seen so far.
Yeah. It really is, like you said, it's not like other sports. So NBA, football, even baseball, with how long their season is, you'll see they'll take their time, they'll simmer down, and then they'll start to pick up the action. And then you'll start to see, even the Rays, look at them. Like, I'm a huge Tampa Bay Rays fan. So to see them go as, what was it, 15-0, I
It's
want to say,
15, yeah, yeah.
15-0 to now, they're still doing pretty well. They beat the Cubs yesterday, so that was really good. But they've definitely been a little bit of a roller coaster, but still, they're still doing well for their division, so that's still nice. I think the Red Sox are in maybe last place, so, that's also, but
Yeah.
with going back to that, it's overall, like you said, like, this is not a sport that you can, it's a shorter season. So they're making it count. They're going after it. And even I read somewhere about, like, even after they won, most teams, when they get their ring ceremony and they do anything like that, a lot of times they don't win that game. So to see them play in front of a sold out crowd, and I know we'll talk about this in a little bit too, is seeing them play in a sold out crowd and win, and not just by like a point or two and not a close game. They have been winning games with such an extent, like, expansive lead, which is so crazy to see.
Has been crazy and also good for us,
Oh, yeah.
because it gives us lots to talk about, but I think, we'll start off with that first game last Thursday night against the
Yeah.
Sparks. That was a tighter game, in all fairness, and one thing that I noticed, I was looking through the box scores so far this season, and one thing that I've seen is, not every night, but, almost every night, we have a star player
Yeah.
who has a bad shooting night or but lacks on defense or
Mhm.
something like that. But I think we have so much depth in this team that one person having a bad night really isn't going to make that big a difference. So Asia Wilson, I think she was shooting like 25%.
Yeah.
So not a great shooting night for her,
No.
and what we would be used to. So I think like it's really good that like we have that depth. We have the Kelsey Plums, the Candice
Oh, yeah.
Parkers, and then even like the folks coming on off the bench to come in and perform. So I think we can afford to have, because people were questioning before the season started, do the Aces have enough depth? And I think so far we've shown we have.
We've shown that we can, like you said, it's not gonna take one player, Jackie had career high 30 points, even though that night they had a lot of turnovers, which was, again, you wouldn't have even, I mean, unless you really, you know, analyzed every single play, realistically, they won. And it wasn't like their players themselves are going out and giving it everything they can.
That's what we're seeing. Like we're seeing like a high in effort.
Mhm.
Like we're not taking a play off
No.
on defense or on offense, and I think that's really showing. Now I think this obviously comes down to Becky a lot. Obviously, her playing career and her
Yes.
coaching career up till now, like you don't. I've never seen Greg Popovich, whether he's having a winning season or a losing season. I've never seen his teams take a playoff. So I think that's what we're seeing from Becky. Like
Yeah.
she's had that instilled in her. Like we're going win or lose. Like we just don't take the foot off. And obviously that leads to Saturday's game
This is
with the
Saturday's,
Rays.
like you said, I think Saturday's game has overall was just a league of its own. The Vegas Golden Knights were in town too, and not just for a regular season game, they were in playoffs, which they won that game, and now they're going to the finals too. Traffic, I kept reading everywhere online, as I was watching things online, everybody was talking about how crazy the traffic was in Vegas to get to that game, which doesn't surprise me. You got 2 games, 2 big time games going on at the same time, but to see people in the Vegas community coming out for that is great. You're showing that women's sports are on the rise. You're seeing that because they could have just said, "Oh, the Knights are in town." And not just in town, they're playing this big game, they win tonight, they're going to the finals. So it's it's great to see that momentum and building in women's sports that we're really getting a push for it. And that's awesome that the fans, I think it was a sold out crowd of over 10,000. So those numbers, while may not seem as large as when you're comparing them to NBA or football or anything like that, but when you're talking about it from a WNBA perspective, those are big numbers that are going to be up and coming.
I think as well, like we've seen the viewing figures
Hmm.
for the start of the season really kind of explode as well,
Yeah.
which has been great. But I think the fact that like you've got traffic problems in Vegas, because I mean I've been in Vegas before.
Yeah.
I was there for I think I was there for like 10 days, 2 weeks, and I never had an issue getting anywhere traffic
No.
wise, whether it was morning, noon, or night, or 3 in the morning. Never had an issue getting anywhere. But
No.
the fact that you are hearing, and I have a friend who lives in Vegas, big shout to her, and like she never mentioned anything about traffic. For her, it was just like, oh, let's go have a sports night kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
um, I think it's great that you can have, because this I think this was always a question with Vegas and professional teams.
Hmm.
Like, what happens if two professional teams have a game on the same night? We've had that now,
Yeah.
and not just on a small scale, like you say, the Golden Knights are playing a playoff game to get to the Stanley Cup,
Yeah.
and Aces are having their ring ceremony, and the
Hmm.
ring ceremony and the banner unveil and everything else was absolutely awesome.
Oh,
One
yeah.
thing I have to say about the banner, and I love about it, is it has all the players' names that were on that team around the banner. And I've not seen that very often. I don't know if it happens other places,
Mhm.
but I was just kind of like, that's actually kind of cool because
Yeah.
sometimes it's nice to look at a banner, looks nice,
Yeah.
2022 champions, whatever. But then you see the names around and you've, oh, that, because in 10 years' time, people remember that we won that year,
Oh,
but
yeah.
you might not necessarily remember every player that was on that team. So you look up to
No.
that banner and you're like, see, they played on that team too. And it's kind
Mhm.
of, oh, Kelsey Plum was back then, and this kind of stuff. So I think it's really cool that they put the names of the players around the banner. I think that adds something.
I think that is really cool too, and like you said, that's, like, thinking about it later on. "Oh, hey, oh, wow, that person was on that team," or not even remembering that person was even on that team, and now seeing where they are now, and it's like, wow, like, those are cool, like, I think overall, like, you know, I saw the rings too. The rings themselves, I was like, "Wow." I saw those, like, photos of all the different angles of them. I was like, "Those are nice."
I think next season, like if we go undefeated and we win the championships, I think the Aces, I think Mark Davis owes us a ring each.
If I
Each, I
call
got the each in there.
if we can call that we go undefeated this year, I think we'll get our own ring too.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think it's necessary.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Brady can probably squidge a few quid together to make an extra couple.
He can give
Uh,
us one of his, from the Buccaneers, from Patriots. I think he has enough, he can share.
well, he's got more than like he can probably carry anyway. I mean, yeah, it must be funny when he goes through like airport check-ins and stuff. I mean, he probably gets TSA like approved, pre-approval or
The
whatever.
pre-check.
Yeah, the pre-checks anyway. But like, could you just imagine like going through and just beep 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 beep, beep like every
Like,
bit of luggage?
gotta take this one off, forgot this one. I mean, let's be real, Tom Brady's probably flying private, so he's not
Yeah,
even dealing with the regular people.
us
Us
little people.
us actual having to wait in a TSA line, nah, Tom Brady's not doing that.
No, but I loved, and this is one thing that us in the UK probably don't get. So at the end of the season, like we just had the end of the soccer season,
Mhm.
and on the last day of the season, the team get the big trophy and everything else, and the season ends, and then we come back in August and the season starts. Like last season never really happened. Whereas in the States, and this is one thing I've always loved, is the team that won always kind of look back at the beginning of their season. They
Yeah.
look back to that championship. They have the ceremony, they have the rings, they have the banners. Like, we just don't have that. I don't think in Europe, really, to be fair. Whereas this is one thing I've always, like, admired about
Yeah.
America. Like, let's like, okay, so we celebrated it at the time,
Mhm.
but, like, let's celebrate it now with the fans, bring the fans in and that kind of thing. And I think to the fact that it was sold out
Oh, yeah.
really speaks volumes that, the Aces have an engaged fan base. This
Yes.
fan base is engaged and wants to see women's basketball.
I think what's cool too, they even played a video of at the actual, like, ceremony of the 2022 season, recapping it. So to see that, to build on that, build that momentum going forward is like, this is our first that was our first home game this season. So to build on what they've already had brewing from last year now into this year, showing a video recapping it to the fans. Maybe it's a new fan coming into, oh, like their friend invited to the game, or now they've started to pick up interest. I think that's cool to see because maybe they weren't a huge follower last year and now they're really getting into it and wanting to follow the game. Or you have young kids, these are the ones that are going to be the ones buying things later on. For them to see and recap last year, oh, I remember that play, or oh, I want to be just like her, I want to be just like Asia Wilson, I want to be just like Kelsey. Like, they're building on that, and I think that's great for them to get in everybody's mind, to stay at the top of everybody's mind. Not just being like, "We won last year, that's it." No, it's, you know, teams here, like you said, they all do that. They throw the parades, then when the season starts, they do everything honorary from last season. So it's to build on that and continue with the momentum.
And talking momentum,
Mhm.
we had a lot going into that game.
Oh, yes.
Um, and I think, I mean, you mentioned it kind of before we started recording, teams, when they have these ring ceremonies or banner ceremonies, tend not to win that game.
Yes.
Like, because you're kind of, there are obviously players who concentrate on that. Um, but I wouldn't say the Aces won this game. I would say the Aces pretty much mugged the Sparks, and
In the
tossed
nicest
them
way
out the
possible.
arena.
In the nicest way possible. I mean, you know, if I could open up a thesaurus right now and my imaginary thesaurus and start looking for a word as to what would best describe it, I don't think it would come close. And I feel, you feel your sympathies, but it's like the Aces really are showing that they are not playing around. They want this. This is not, we won last year. All right, we got it. We got a ring. It's like we got two hands. We got rings to fill.
One thing that and talking about the Sparks is, I think certainly over the 2 games, I mean, the first game, they did keep it close. One player that kinda stands out to me in the 2 games is on a hardship contract, and that's Carly Samuelson. And, like, she seems to be, like, the best almost like the best player on the team,
Mhm,
which is mental because she's obviously, her sister, Kate Lou, is pregnant and
mhm.
she's out, and yet Carly's come in here and she's really, really performing. And,
Yeah.
like, I know, when Katie Lou, or if they get other players back that are injured, come back, that hardship contract has to end to allow
Yeah.
the other player back onto the roster. But surely the Sparks are going to have a problem if they have someone on a hardship contract that's
Who's
performing that well.
yeah.
Like, and not even just against the Aces, but in the games before as well. Like, if someone's performing that well, that makes it really difficult for the Sparks to make that decision.
I think with hardship contracts, I think they have to work, I don't wanna say they have to work harder, 'cause that's just, I guess, like a pun on words, but it's like they wanna show it that they deserve to be there. They're not taking for granted the fact, I don't wanna say that players are taking for granted what they're doing, but that hardship contract, they got their one shot. You have a limited time to do what you need to do to show why you should be there. And I think players who are hungry to be there are going to do so. They're going to show, whether it's that team, whether it's the Sparks, or whether it's another team in the same organization. Look what I did in that short amount of time. Like you said, she's probably becoming one, not one of their best players, but she's showing what she can do to show that she deserves to be there. Or even if when she goes back overseas, because you often see them go back, like going overseas, showing more top tier teams. Look what I did at the WNBA level. I deserve to be in this room.
That's very true, and, there's always movement in rosters in the
Yeah.
WNBA, so, if a spot was to come available, because the Sparks signed another player to a hardship contract, but
Mhm.
for 1 game,
Oh, yeah.
and then and then you're like, "Okay, well, either that didn't work out or," but not actually, in fact, they couldn't have her any longer because they had enough players of their
Yeah.
own back. But moving back to our aces, like, they flat out, like, so far over these 4 games are just absolutely killing it, and we went into Minnesota on a back-to-back. We didn't go to Minnesota, sorry, we were at home, but we go into that game, like, just beat the Sparks twice,
Yeah.
had the rings, had everything else, and, you would kinda think the energy levels are kinda like,
But
"Oh,
they
let's just simmer, let's just calm things down." Oh my god, no, like, I seen them coming into the arena before the game, and,
weren't.
like, normally you see players and they just kinda walk in, or, if you're Westbrook, your swagger is almost
You're
knocking
wearing
people down.
the most ridiculous outfit.
Exactly. Now, and what I'm seeing is, and I kinda look back at one of the other games as well,
Mhm.
when these players are walking into arena, they're not walking into arena, they are hopping into arena, like, they are running into the arena. And I think, like, you look at other teams that when they walk into an arena, it is, "Yeah, we're just swaggering in, like, yeah,
Yeah.
we're here to play a game." Whereas the Aces, their energy level is already up here
Oh, yeah.
before they even walk in the arena. And I think that kind of mindset is so critical for
Yes.
a team who wants to repeat.
I think that's super important too, like you said, because at the end of the day, the game is not just physical like skill, it's your mental skill too. Going in already from the beginning knowing this is not just a game. We are going to win, and they're not winning by like a couple points. In fact, they're winning by a wide margin of points. And they're not going in struggling. They're going in showing we are the best. And I mean, I know that's pretty early on to still say that. I know it's still early, but it's going in with that mentality of we are the best. We are going to get it done this year again. And it's showing the world why they need to be a part of it too.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think, like, going back to kind of percentages and,
Mhm.
taking maybe not everyone playing 100%
Yeah.
or missing shots, having a bad night, like, even against the Lynx,
Hmm.
like, Candace Parker was 1 for 9,
Yeah.
which, you wouldn't expect from her. Kelsey Plum was 5 from 16, she was shooting 31%. But yet we were still able to come in, and it was Asia Wilson, it was like she stepped up, it was Chelsea Gray, she stepped up,
Yeah.
Alicia Clark even stepped up, and I think that's something that's critical. And even, like, you look to the bench, Kayla George comes in, she takes a couple shots, she's in,
Yeah.
and I think what's important is these players get minutes,
Yes.
because
Mhm.
I sometimes feel like in the WNBA, it's slightly different to other leagues
Yeah.
where, you know, it's like your bench is only 7 strong, but actually you've got like 8, 9, 10, 11
Yeah.
sitting on the bench. And sometimes I feel like teams forget about their other players or their role players.
Yeah.
And what I'm liking from Becky this season so far, is we're not really seeing that, especially against the Sparks in that second game.
Mhm.
Like, we thought everyone played double-digit minutes,
Mhm.
which I think is quite unusual for the WNBA, to be honest.
No, like you said, I think unless it's a team that's really about their rookie players or in development, the Aces, they don't have. I mean, I don't want to say they don't have to play their players on the bench, but they have a very strong core players, and then it's like they still want to make sure that everybody on their team is they're not. I mean, they're not tiring out their starting players. They want to make sure everybody has a chance because I think Becky does it very well in helping her players develop into not just being, not just focusing on her mains. She wants everybody to have a chance and become the best players of the best versions of themselves that they can be.
Yeah, because I know, like, from a player's perspective, not obviously at that level, but, like, even for me, like, I remember sitting on a bench one day, grinding the pine, and, it's getting to the end of the game, and you're like, "Oh, I'm not gonna get on in this game.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point?" And I just, like, start taking my shoes off, and, like, there's still, like, 3 minutes to play. I just start taking my shoes off. I'm like, "Yeah, socks are off. There we go." And and you're kinda like, "Yeah, what's the kinda point?" Whereas when you've got a coach, and I think it was the year after, I had another coach who was very much like, everyone gets some minutes, even
Yeah.
if it's just in the first quarter. We get you a couple of minutes in the first quarter, and then you're benched pretty much for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Like, at least you've got out early where you can kinda make an impact, and I
Mhm.
kind of feel Becky is kinda doing that, and I'm liking that. And against the Lynx, like, to see everyone hit the floor
Oh, yeah.
again, like, 2 games in a row, every single player hit the floor. That's really nice to see, and I think especially against the Lynx, because I feel I kinda feel a bit bad for the Lynx because, like, you look on paper, they're a really, really nice team.
Yeah.
They are missing, obviously, Sylvia Fowles, who
Mhm.
was a massive player on that team. They are missing her. But Nifi Sokola, I think, is stepping up pretty well.
I think it's kind of funny what you said about you how the game that you like when you were playing yourself, how you would start taking off your shoes, you were like, "All right, like I'm done."
But
But it's kind of like at that level right now where it's like, when players aren't when they start to feel like, "Right, we have such a star-studded team, I'm not gonna play." Their mentality starts to go down the drain. They're gonna start to feel defeated. They're gonna start to not wanna, like, be at and then when they're finally put in the game, they're like again, it's where that mental men like, that mental concept comes back into it, where it's like, "Alright, it's not just physical, I can do it. I have the skill set to physically do this." But it's like, am I mentally ready to? And that's the big thing is so when she's having them all play back-to-back games, that's great for them because it's keeping them ready. Well, maybe the next game, maybe it's a little harder. So maybe she's not gonna have them play as many minutes, but it's still keeping them ready and keeping them adjusted.
I think that's something that Becky's done pretty well.
Yeah.
I think, to be fair, in all fairness, Bill Laimbeer before Becky did pretty well was we have this next person up mentality. So if someone like Asia Wilson isn't having a great shooting night, you've got
Yeah.
other players that are going to step up, or it's Candice Parker. And I highlight those two players because obviously those two players have both been MVPs,
Mhm.
both champions, and I think it's good to show that they're human too,
Oh, yeah.
and they will have bad shooting nights, they will have off nights. So I think we moved into that Lynx game pretty well, and I
Yeah.
think we pretty much finished the Lynx off, which was nice. So we kept our undefeated streak
Yeah.
on the go. Now, Becky made a quote this week, didn't she? You can tell us about
Did.
that.
I was reading over it a little bit earlier this week, and then this morning, and she said she was confident that her team was gonna go out and give it their all each night. And I think this whole time we've talked about that, is they're not letting what happened in the past keeping that in the past. They're acting as if, yeah, they won last season, but they're not letting it be their everything. They're making sure that they're going out and they are giving it as if every day is a new day. And you're seeing it, like we've talked about earlier, like how you're seeing it in each and every play that they're doing. And in game, they're going out and giving it their best. They're not treating it just like, "Oh, we can lose this one today. It's okay. We're 4-0, we can lose this one." No, they're going out and they want to bring it another ring home to Vegas.
I think what's funny is sometimes when coaches make comments to the media, uh, I, I sometimes think, is that for us or is that for the players? Like, is that just that little reminder to the players? Like, yeah, you do have last year's ring, but we have this season to look
Yeah.
forward to and to get into. So sometimes I kind of I like the nice little sound bites that come out
Oh,
from
yeah.
coaches, but sometimes I do think, and she again, she studied under Greg Popovich,
Yeah.
who is master manipulator. So I do wonder if that had something to do with it.
No, it's pretty cool to see her coming from the NBA. I think you're not really seeing too many WNBA coaches coming from the NBA. And you see her level in how she's developed her team. You're seeing that versus maybe another coach who's never under like worked under the NBA. So to see her mentality, the way she develops her players, to be under Becky, like that's an elite level of coaching right there.
It is, and it's great to see. And I think, I mean, I always praised Becky, and
Oh yeah.
a couple of years ago when the Bucks job came up,
Hmm.
I was kind of, and she was being interviewed for it and all this kind of stuff. I was like, this could be it. Like this could be a
Yeah.
real thing. And I think the Bucks made a mistake. Like genuinely, I think they made a mistake. And it's to the Aces' credit that they
Oh yeah.
went in and was like, "We'll offer you a contract."
Yeah, and look at how she's definitely doing in Vegas. I mean, you Vegas is definitely happy with the Bucks' mistake.
Oh, 100%. Now, big night coming up, and we'll
Yes.
talk about it close to the time, but I thought it's important to mention the Aces kind of released their schedule of special nights that they'll have at the arena. So if
Mhm.
it's bobblehead night or whatever, but we also have Pride Month that we're in at the moment, and we also have our Pride game, our Pride
Mhm.
night, which will be on the 15th of June
Yeah.
at the arena. How important is it, especially with a league that has so many players who are gay? How important is it for them that we have not just this for the WNBA, but actually it's across sports as a whole in the states?
I think it's super important. You're definitely seeing, like you said, majority of the players in the WNBA are gay. So it's definitely super important to make sure that it's being understood, that's being, that unity, and it's definitely Pride Night. It's going to be, this is Pride Month. The start of it is June 1st. So that's definitely important. You want to see that in a majority of, like, in all sports. I think in all sports in general. Because, especially, I guess the best way to say this is, you know, it's making sure that everybody feels included, and it's making sure everybody is seen and everybody is heard, and not just like, "Oh, well, you're gay, we don't like." No, it's like, "No, this is everybody coming together about it." You're obviously in the WNBA. You wanna make sure your players are accepted, and your players are, "This is who we are all coming together." And that's so important.
It really is, and I think it's we see it kind of in men's sports.
Mhm.
It's still very like, "Oh, no, you can't come out," and, like, all this kind
Yeah.
of stuff, and there's still a lot, and that's one thing I took from the WNBA, like, these women who play,
Mhm.
like, they they're just, like, open, and they come out, and they get
They're happy,
married.
they're with their families, exactly.
Like, we seen Chantel Tribucherry, she got married last week,
Mhm.
she played in the original league, for the Utah Stars, she got married at the weekend, and I think this is important, and I think as well, mental health wise. Like,
Yes.
I think it's important for players to know that they're accepted because
Mhm.
who wants to play in a place that they feel that they're not accepted?
Yeah. Or they
W
can't be themselves either.
Exactly. I mean, we've seen, it was just before the end of the soccer season in Spain, we've seen a player being racially abused,
Yes.
and, like, in the middle of a game.
Oh,
A
yeah.
and he goes off to the referee, which is the right thing to do, and he reports it to him,
Yep.
and thankfully, we're seeing, those authorities in
Yeah.
place in Spain do something about it. bit softly, softly, but they did something
Mhm.
about it. Uh, but I think maybe this is something where we should have more
Oh, yeah.
nights like this
Mhm.
throughout the season, not just in the W, but across all of sports.
I think it's important. I think you mentioned it a little while ago when you were talking about it, like, in men's sports, you don't really see a lot of players really coming out. You're starting to see. I think there was recently an NFL player, I wanna say last season, who came out, and you're starting to see that, but it's not really a thing you're seeing all that much, and now and it's starting to become more like, but I think players are still on the men's side, I wanna say maybe just the culture itself is they're still not fully ready to embrace it 110%.
It's still just such a big stigma
Yes.
about it, and like even I mean, I was watching an episode of Ted Lasso, and
Mhm,
where they dealt with that scenario where you have a player who's gay who he's not leading a double life, but he's hiding a part of his life,
mhm.
and he feels uncomfortable with that because he feels like he can't share it with his teammates,
Yeah.
with with his family and friends and stuff. And I think it, it, it's actually quite refreshing when we see it in the WNBA and
Mhm.
NWSL and other leagues. Like women are strong enough to come out and be who they want to be, and I think that's really
Exactly.
important.
Like you said, they wanna be who they wanna be, and I think that's super important. Um, me being a woman in sports, while I don't play, I'm definitely coming at it from a different angle, but I know for sure, like, you want to you deserve to be in that room, and that's what's super important. You wanna show what you can do, be in that room, be as if anybody else can, and be who you wanna be, not hiding behind doors, not thinking, "Oh, I can't be really who I am. I can only show this part of my life." No, you deserve to be there like everybody else.
Precisely. Now, moving back to now, so we have some games coming up. We've got Atlanta coming up this week. This, for me, is a tough test
Okay.
because Atlanta are one of these teams this season. I think a bit like the Indiana Fever. I
Mhm.
think they're really going to push teams to their limit, because these are young teams
Yes.
that they want to show that they belong in the WNBA, so
Yeah.
they're going to go all out, and we've seen that already, both from Atlanta and Indiana. Maybe not
Well,
from the records. The records maybe don't show that, but you look at the score lines,
mhm.
and you look at the way that they're playing in these games, and they're not giving up.
Well, can we talk about how Indiana won
Yeah,
their
well,
first game the other day, which was
they
very
did.
exciting, and I think that's what they've been looking for in, the talent of players that they've been looking for. But for Atlanta, they're 2-2 right now. It'll be interesting to see them on Friday play against the actual Aces and see what they can do. We're not home. We're going on a 4-game road trip. Like, we're going to play Indiana. We're going to play Atlanta. It'll be interesting to see what happens, like you said, with these young players who have looked after, like, the players that are on maybe the Aces, who have been who have tried to model their game after them, who have said, "I'm a huge fan. I wanna do this. I wanna play against them." And they're being they're watching the film, they're watching what this team can do. And now to be able to, like, go in and say, "Okay, let's play against them. Let's do this."
So, are we going to be undefeated when we come back next week?
Oof. I am gonna put in a new projection. Um,
Oh,
let's see what the numbers come up with here. I wanna say we'd lose one of the games. Now, I am going to surprise everybody and not say who I think we're gonna lose to. But I say we are going to be in another 4 games. I'm gonna say we're gonna be 7-1.
7-1. Okay.
My new projection by the next time that we film, I say 7-1.
So you're giving up on our undefeated season? Is that what
You
we're
know
saying?
you know, yes and no. Can I hold 2 answers? Putting in 2
Sure, sure.
different 2 different things into the atmosphere, I say 7-1.
So I'm gonna go 8-0.
Okay,
I
8-0. Alright.
I feel that the energy level that we have and, like, the a lot of people say momentum doesn't mean anything, and some
Oh,
people
it
say
does.
it does. I believe that it does, and
Yeah.
I think the momentum that we carry into this week the only thing I don't like in that like, yes, we don't have games on a Monday, and I totally understand that, but then we didn't have a game on Wednesdays either, and it's like, the ACs need games. Like, we started our season behind everyone else. Like, we hadn't
Mhm.
played as many games as everyone else, and we're still. I feel like we're playing catch up. So I'd
Yeah.
like us to catch up, um, and so like we're on a par with everyone else roughly, and then we can, you know, take the foot off the gas a bit. But I really feel like Becky's got them firing all cylinders. So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go 8-0.
Alright, so we're still
Um,
holding our 8-0. We're still holding our undefeated here.
yeah,
I'm saying 7-1.
seven
I
one.
think if we lose, from according to my projections, I have a feeling it's not going to be a, like, crazy loss, like, it's not gonna be
Yeah.
like,
Oh
"Wow."
no,
I think it's gonna be, like,
overtime.
couple points, like, it's going to be super close, we're gonna fight to the end, but I think it's going to be one of those games where you're like, "Wow, we could have done maybe this one little thing differently." So you're saying 8-0, I'm saying 7-1. I guess what viewers will have to tell us what they think, but so far, we're
So
getting
far.
we're still on the undefeated card.
Indeed. Now, we will be back next week, but you can always check out Across the Pond Liberty with Stacia and Kirsten. They have done their episode this week already, and it is out. They get into John Paul Jones. They talk about Brianna Stewart's big black eye shiner that
Hopefully
she
that gets
had.
better.
Yeah, hopefully that looks it gets better. We also have Across the Pond WNBA coming up this week with myself and Michelle. She's back. Of course, we cover a whole array of other sports from the NFL, MLB, right across. So you can join us on any one of our shows. Just click on the links. And if you do have any comments or you want to leave us a message, please feel free to do so across the pond, WNBA across social media, and we will pick them up and we will quite happily read them out, put them up on the screen if you like as well. But from both of us, we hope you have a great week and enjoy watching some basketball over the weekend.
Have a good one, everybody.